Well, the Little Master he was called, but the term Little applied only to his stature. In ability, he towered over his era. Clive Churchill started with Souths in 47, played for the Rabbitohs until 55. During this period, he made 5 overseas trips, captained Australia for 6 years, played a record 99 consecutive representative matches, and became the first of the great running fullbacks. Indeed, he started a trend which has culminated in the present crop of fine attacking footballers. And in that context, I've got Clive with me today, and I want you, Clive, to give me your opinions as we look at some of these great players, great attacking players, of how you rate them. Feel up to that?
Yes, Rex. Yeah.
Firstly, I'd like to ask you, that running style that you developed was pretty new and sort of outrageous in 1947, wasn't it?
Well, Rex, my young days I was a 5'8", and when in Newcastle they put me up to play as a fullback, I thought, well, you're making more pressure for yourself by kicking the other fella. Of course, the opposition forwards around him, and he's going to kick back to you. And I wasn't a very strong kicker in my day, so I just got into my mind that I'd bring the ball up to the three-quarter line, and that's how the running trend of play sort of came in.
Because you had an incredible acceleration in your younger days too. Even in your middle part of your career, you were pretty quick, weren't you?
Well, I was a sprinter and a runner at school, and I think I just developed that by training pretty hardly, Rex, as a off the mark and all that sort of thing.
I can tell one little story about you, Clive. I hope you won't mind.
No,
this little bloke used to be so quick. I remember playing for Manly once against him at Brookvale Oval, and we'd followed up he'd got the ball, and we'd followed up to try to pen him off, and you ran up to me, poked your tongue out, as you used to do to a lot of forwards, and ran round and said, "You'll never catch me, you big," and we'll delete that. And I yelled out, "Well, you're going to have to get slow one of these days." And it took a long while though, didn't it?
That's Rex. And did you eventually get hold of it?
I think I got you late in your career when you were about 50, when you retired. Anyway, let's have a look at some of these players that we've got going around. And when we think in terms of rugby league this year, we're thinking of fullbacks scoring 91 tries. This is a fellow that scored 13, Gary Dowling. How do you rate Gary?
Well, Gary's a very good attacking player, Rex. Defensive-wise, I don't know. The fullbacks these days don't seem to rely on defence much.
Here's another one, Stan Cutler, from the same club that originally Dowling came from.
No, I rate Cutler as a very good player, Rex. I've seen him the last 2 weekends playing, and he's come into the three-quarter line excellently.
Wayne Smith for Western Suburbs?
I don't know much about him, Rex, but
very quick.
He's a very quick player.
What about Johnson, a country boy? You'd like the idea of a country boy. Look at the way he hits a line.
Yes, good hitting the line, Rex, but when they think that scoring tries is the whole game of fullbacks these days, they've got to rely a little bit on their defence too. And you notice in the papers these days that you say so-and-so winger scored in the corner. They don't say where the fullback was. In my day, I say he's run round Churchill, or he's run round Langlands, he's run round someone, to score
used to
tries.
get the publicity. Sigsworth, the previous try, a good young player from the Newtown club. Dan was the man we've just scored. Here's Graham Eadie, the Australian fullback.
Great strong player, Rex. Very strong.
Yes, he was almost like a forward in his physique, isn't he?
Yes. And very fast.
Now, Mullane, the Cronulla whippet, he's very quick. Watch him run onto this grubber kick through by Cox.
Excellent player, Rex. Good coming at the back line, but I think he should have stopped a try last Sunday and he let that young Wardle run round him. And
what about this big fellow, Alan McMahon? He's been the sort of 2IC to Australian fullbacks for a long while.
Yes, but he's been playing in several positions too, hasn't he?
Yeah. There's the man from North Sydney, Schofield, who's now with the Penrith club.
That's right, yes. He's a very good player, Rex. Good goal kicker, but I don't think they don't play in their positions as fullbacks, half those fellas.
What I must point out here, there are 2 clubs that we didn't have for fullbacks, one for Eastern Suburbs and one for South Sydney, but they've changed their players around so much over this year that it was hard to determine who was actually the man involved. You've seen 10 first-grade fullbacks there. Which of those do you rate as the number 1 in Australia?
Well, Graham Eadie must be rated number 1 in Australia, Rex, because he's a good attacking player, he's a good goal kicker and a very stout defender. I think of all those fullbacks, I think that Graham Eadie stays back in his position more than the other fellows.
Yeah.
You see these days, or this last few seasons, that before a scrum goes down, you find half the fullbacks standing up on the blind side and standing in the three-quarter line instead of standing back and coming into it.
Yeah.
And being a sort of a shock attack. And they don't know whether they're going to win the ball or not. And they stand up there next to the other side's got the ball, and if they could read where the fullback is, they could put a chip over or put some up the blind side, and they're hopelessly out of position.
So you're going for Graham Eadie as the number 1 still, despite the fact that he might have finished off on a rather sad note this year?
Well, every footballer has a bad day, and Graham just was on the losing end of a team that lost a few games the latter end of the season, and I saw him in the test matches this year and the interstate matches, and I thought he was a pick of the whole lot of them. The other fella's not too far behind him.
Just in conclusion then, Clive, what would you say to fullbacks about defence these days?
Well, defence defending is a very hard thing to explain, Rex. You've got to put the ball handler in a position where you want him, not where he wants you. If you see the ball going across the back line, you think that winger's going to get the ball. We've got to get over there, so if he gets it, I'm here to knock him over. But don't say, oh, gee, he's got the ball, now I've got to get across. Next minute he's gone out round you or stepped inside you and he's left you hopelessly out of position.
Well, you've heard from the man they called the Little Master. Thanks, Clive Churchill.
It's a pleasure, Rex.
Nice to renew old acquaintance.